you are married, 24 years old young man, and you are being drafted, if I understand right.
Correct.
And your wife is willing to stay on her own because Mila was not born back then.
No, Mila was born in
66.
66, many years
So,
later.
so she was willing for you to go to Vietnam with all that fear because you were already safe, I think, by being at the academics.
Well, relatively, it was a choice. It was not an obvious, I had to make a decision because to stay in the academic world, which at that time I had partially not abandoned, but I went into Washington. I was looking to see what opportunities there were. There were many. I took 10 examinations and I was admitted to the CIA and to the State Department. These were all separate exams, and I could have done that. I could have done that and stayed partially academic. I could continue teaching. And in fact, when I was in the Army, once I got settled down in the Army, I was able to teach at American University and University of Maryland in the evening. The choices of students was very interesting. I once, at that time, the new president of the United States got a law passed called the Law Enforcement Assistance Administration, in which they provided equipment to little cities, little towns that didn't have radios and things. But they also said that an educated police officer is a better police officer. And so I had classes full of police officers.
Oh my God.
And many of them had already come back from Vietnam. And the first book we taught was Norman Mailer's Armies of the Night, which was an anti-Vietnam book. And they taught me more about what it was like to be in Vietnam than I learned in any book at all. I had great respect for them as police officers. They were maligned, they still are. Police officers are not loved. And yet I found them to be some of the finest. Talk about character. I mean, these were people who were very fine human beings. So that resulted, if I had stayed at the university, which I could have, I'd be in a regular class teaching English literature. So this was a great change. What happened, however, was while I was in the Army, I had tried to get admitted to law schools in the Ivy League, Harvard and Yale. I would have been admitted because I had my academic record plus my experience. I was a good candidate for law school, but the Army, I couldn't go to law school in the Army. I was still determined to do that, so I started going to law school in the evening at Georgetown University Law School. That was local. It didn't have the reputation of Harvard and Yale, but it was a fine school. So I was in the Army, I was going to law school, and I was teaching classes one or two nights a week. And I was very busy, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But at the time, I made it very clear, my senior officers wanted me to go into OCS, Officers Candidate School. I knew that if I did that, I would stay in the Army at least another 6 years. That was not really a choice. My wife would not have stayed with me under those circumstances. So I got out of the Army early on the basis of my teaching, because I had to teach a summer class, but I was also going to law school. And then once I got out of the Army, I made a choice to go into the civil service. Now, this was all a continuum of choices, all of which emanated from the first one, but they led to them. I went to work it was in the White House, called the Office of Emergency Planning. Now it's known as FEMA. You might forget the Federal Emergency something. And now whenever there's a hurricane, they rush. Right now they're working very hard on the pandemic. But I went to Alaska when they had a big earthquake. I flew with my boss there. These were things that were thrust upon me, but I was, someday when we talk again, I'll tell you about the blessing my parents received when they left Europe, and they each went to a great Hasidic rabbi, and each of them gave them a blessing, which was unusual. Usually the blessing was, you should remain a Jew, you should remember the Shabbat, you should study,
Yeah.
remember Derech Eretz, all of those things. Instead, each of these rabbis, 7 years apart in different cities, gave my parents a blessing that said, your children will be nosechen.
Nosei chen.
Nosechen.